Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Las Peñas Wash Process Guatemala from Friedhats Coffee. And there's the bottle right there. And Friedhats, based out of Amsterdam, Netherlands, and they're a coffee roaster we featured several times on this channel before, and they're a pretty popular coffee roaster, as not only do they have one of our most viewed reviews of all time, but our most recent Friedhats video is one of our most liked videos, so it's safe to say you guys are really enjoying the Friedhats content. That's not necessarily why we purchased this coffee. We purchased it because, well, we love washed Guatemalan coffees, and it very much sounded like our flavor profile coffee. But if you do enjoy the Friedhats content, then just let us know, and we'll see about reviewing some more of their coffees in the future, as up to this point we've had pretty positive experiences with their coffees. This right here is day 29 of this coffee. And recipe we settled on for this one is a 16:1 water to coffee ratio at 208 degrees Fahrenheit, brewed through the Chemex with a medium grind. They are a light European for the roast profile, and let's start discussing their coffee. Day 14, first experience, and it was a pretty positive first impression, as we were getting a little bit more sweetness than we had experienced with previous Friedhats coffees. Now, when it comes to Friedhats coffees, we'd say that they're on the more pretty side as opposed to the overly sweet side, so that's why it was just a little bit different of an experience than we had had from their previous coffees. Slight bit of this heavier stone fruit as well, but the most distinct thing was this creamy sugar sweetness, which lended itself to a pretty positive first impression. Day 16, went back, very flavorful cup of coffee, and again, Friedhats coffees don't necessarily tend to be on the more flavorful side, again tend to be more on the pretty side. So this one having this kind of more flavorful cup was pretty interesting to this point. This dark honey was definitely present in the cup, and that's another one of these themes that's going to be in this cup of coffee. As we've said this before with other Friedhats coffees, that's this sort of flavor that we're getting, is this kind of dark honey, which seems to be present in so many of their coffees, in the same way that this kind of brown candy sweetness is present in a lot of Manhattan's coffees. So we continued on stone fruit, both pronounced and slightly unique, as it felt a little bit more like an apricot than a peach that they have listed on here, and it was still a pretty sugar-like cup of coffee. Still pretty positive experience. Day 18 ran it through the V60 for the first time, and is bringing out this kind of zesty vanilla in the cup, and they do have listed on here a vanilla milkshake, and it makes a lot of sense because I was definitely getting a little bit of vanilla, and there's definitely this kind of creamy sugar sweetness to it, so I guess combine those two components and you could definitely see the vanilla milkshake that they have listed on here, even though I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a vanilla milkshake. Coffee remains super flavorful with an abundance of the sugar sweetness, very desserty, almost like a peach orange creamsicle, and that's the kind of creamy sweetness I would describe it more as, is this kind of creamsicle flavor to it and a more sweeter side of this orange. Day 21, again through the V60, and the coffee's been remarkably consistent. No matter which brew method you brewed it through, no matter what recipe you were brewing it through, the coffee for the most part maintained the same sort of flavor profile, this super sugary sweetness with the slight stone fruit, and again, just kind of this orange peach creamsicle-like taste to the cup. Day 23, still, again, super sugary sweetness, and then it reminded me a lot of the Techno Peach, which is a coffee we reviewed recently as a wash process Ethiopia from Luna, as well as the sweetness from the Felipe Contreras, which was a anaerobic, actually, processed Guatemala from Manhattan. So it had the sweetness of the Manhattan coffee, but it also had the flavor profile of the Techno Peach, which we felt was a little bit more of a tame coffee. So having both of those things kind of mixed together made for a pretty positive impression of this coffee, still to this point. Very much enjoying the sweetness, would describe it as kind of this like pastry-like sweetness. Day 24, getting a little bit more of the strong floral honey in the cup, and we've been touching on that briefly, but as the coffee was aging a little bit more, that flavor profile was becoming even more pronounced, which was probably the most pronounced flavor in the Techno Peach, is what we were experiencing in abundance in this cup as well. So it's pretty nice, consistently been the most dominant characteristic in this cup from this point on. Still plenty of sweetness in the cup as well, and as we're drinking it on day 29 as well, there's still plenty of sweetness in this cup. Day 25 went back to our standard recipe and floral honey right from the start, and it is a nice way to start the cup. Buttery, pastry-like sweetness in the cup in the finish as well, and then the slight kind of peachy orange cream-like component in this cup. Pretty enjoyable, very much enjoying the coffee on those days. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. And as I'm looking at this tasting wheel, I do like the tasting wheel on day 29 as well for what I'm experiencing. But let's go through it. The sweetness, we've been talking about that a lot. Level 4, I think that might be the highest we've ever charted a Friedhats coffee, and it's like the epitome of a level 4, maybe slightly higher. I mean, if we're being very specific, like a 4.1, 4.2, it's a pretty sweet cup of coffee. It definitely justifies that 4. Cleanliness level 4, definitely. And the florals, even though they don't have floral listed on here, I couldn't help but shake the feeling that this floral honey is the most dominant characteristic in the entirety of the cup, even more so than the creamy, sugary sweetness. So that's why the florals are marked at a level 4. Finish, level 3. Yeah, not the most lasting cup. Acidity, level 3, definitely got a slight bit of acidity. And then the fruits we must discuss, of course, the citrus fruit and the stone fruit. I have them on equal footing, as I couldn't help but shake the feeling that whatever fruits I was experiencing were in equal parts of both the fleshy fruits as well as the citrus fruit, as I was experiencing probably just a little bit more orange than I think that they have noted on here. Again, this kind of buttery pastry-like sweetness, which is very common throughout this cup of coffee. It's what I'm kind of experiencing in the finish right now as I'm drinking this cup. Very much present, and that goes with the sweetness, but anything else necessarily worth noting? Bitterness. I think it's just kind of from the honey that the bitterness is charted, because it does have a very slight bitterness, but again, not coffee bitterness, just more of a kind of like this honey bitterness. Caramel level 2, chocolate low, body pretty low. Yeah, I think for the most part everything else looks about accurate. I don't know if I would change a single thing on this day from when I made the tasting wheel originally. All right, overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. This is another positive impression of Friedhats coffees. I've had back-to-back good Friedhats coffees, and I think I like this one a little bit more than the previous review as well, as I think this one just kind of grew on me, given that my biggest issue with the Techno Peach was that it felt a slight bit tame. This one being a little bit more vibrant version of that same coffee felt really positive. It being in Guatemala was a huge positive. I mean, there are so many characteristics that I talk about a lot. Love the sweetness, and love the florality, love the cleanliness. So hitting those 3 marks pretty high is going to create a pretty enjoyable cup of coffee for me personally. So I'd say pretty nice job on this coffee specifically. Probably on the better end of washed Guatemalans I've had this year. The type of person I would suggest this coffee to is, I think it's kind of a perfect fit for somebody that did enjoy the Luna Techno Peach and wants something just a little bit more flavorful, a little bit more vibrant, as I felt that this one just kind of hit the same sort of flavor profile with a little bit more sweetness in the cup, so that made it a pretty enjoyable cup of coffee. You were still getting a nice bit of the stone fruit, and definitely a lot of that pastry buttery sweetness that you're experiencing from the Techno Peach as well. So that's the best kind of comparison I can have. And again, it's going to have that lighter profile as you'd expect from a coffee roaster like Friedhats. But I think I'm going to leave this review at that. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Las Peñas Wash Process Guatemala from Friedhats Coffee. Thank you for watching.